Welcome back, everybody. It's time to talk NHL hockey. Yes, I'm even wearing my hockey hat. That's right. I am in the mood, and I am so excited to be able to talk to our NHL managing editor, Jim Cerny, who's here. Of course, Jim is well known around the hockey community, from broadcast to working with the NHL. Now he's here with us at Sportsnaut and over at Forever Blue Shirts. So we're excited to have Jim, who's with us directly from the All-Star game, of course, at the Scotiabank Arena. We are going to talk a little bit about hockey, but we got to get into this trade. I'm telling you, of course, going into the All-Star game, who would have thought that Elias Lindholm would be traded now? The deadline not till March, another month to go, but there's already a lot of action. Jim, talk to me about this trade and sort of the buzz around it there at the All-Star game.
Yeah, it was a big trade. Elias Lindholm was right at the top of, the watch list, if you will, guys that could get traded. He's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. Calgary was trying to extend him, but apparently their offer was not to his liking. And GM Craig Conroy said, as soon as he knew that there was kind of a, too vast a gap there to bridge, that they'd have to move him. And to be honest, I think Calgary did a really terrific job. They get Kuzmenko back, a guy who was a big goal scorer for the Vancouver Canucks last season, who has struggled this season under Rick Tocchet. But he's certainly a guy that, has one good NHL season under his belt and gives them something to work with moving forward. They also got a first-round pick. They got a couple picks in the trade, a couple prospects as well. So this is a big-time trade. But the thing that grabs you about it, it's happening at the All-Star break, right? You still have 4 weeks to go until the trade deadline on March 8th. And now, arguably, the biggest name has come off the board. I mean, we can't predict who else could be traded, but of the names of guys that were expected to be dealt, this was a big deal. And some crazy circumstances around it too. Lindholm was telling us yesterday here in Toronto that he was flying home from Mexico, or flying back to Calgary from Mexico, to which I did ask Elias Lindholm, wait a minute, you're burying the lead here, because who knew that there was a direct flight from Calgary to Mexico?
Go figure.
Versa, right? Anyway, so he said somewhere halfway back to Calgary, all of a sudden he got cell service, he got cell reception on his phone somehow. And he looked at it and he had like 36 messages. He's like,
my goodness.
Uh-oh. And uh-oh was a good uh-oh for him. He's going to arguably the best team in the NHL this season, the Vancouver Canucks. So neat little story, certainly a big deal trade-wise. And I think it shows that contenders are going to be aggressive. They're not going to wait till March 7th or 8th ahead of the deadline. If they can get a deal done now, they're going to get it done now.
Yeah, interesting stuff. And being there at the epicenter, everybody obviously in the NHL world in Toronto for the All-Star game. What else are you hearing? I mean, you're there, ears to the sidewalk. Tell us what else you might be hearing. What might we see before the trade deadline? Now that this trade happened, you know how people tend to get caught up in it, and they want to be a part of the action too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, certainly it gets all us reporters talking, and you have a lot of the insiders, Pierre LeBrun, Darren Drager's there, the guys from NHL Network, TSN, so everybody's talking. And one of the names that kept cropping up was, well, who's the next center that's going to get traded here? A lot of teams need centers, and not necessarily first or second line guys, but second or third line guys, your mid-tier centers. And Sean Monahan's name kept coming up. Where's Sean Monahan going to go? Is he a Ranger target? Is he a Boston Bruins target? Well, now Pierre LeBrun earlier this morning is reporting that it's a done deal, that the Canadiens are going to trade Sean Monahan to the Winnipeg Jets. So here's another team, a surprising team this season, similar to Vancouver. Not as much was expected from the Canucks nor the Winnipeg Jets this season. But here are the Winnipeg Jets jumping into the fray again a month before the deadline and reportedly hopping in to get one of the top available centers in Sean Monahan. We don't know the parameters yet of the deal, but that's what LeBrun is reporting. And typically when Pierre reports it, you find out an hour or two later that the deal is actually taking place. So, if indeed that happens here while we're here in Toronto, that's a month out. and you just wiped out probably the top two centers off the board. So that would lead me to believe other contenders are going to be like, uh-oh, we got to be aggressive here. Because that's the tone that's been set by two of the top teams in the league this season.
Yeah, it's incredible what's been happening. When we look at the league now, especially too, with all of the teams jockeying for improvement, looking towards the trade deadline to add to their benches. You look at the Eastern Conference, right? You see Boston, of course. You see the Rangers, which you are well familiar with Forever Blue shirts. Talk a little bit about the Eastern Conference right now, and how what surprises have you seen? Who's really stepped up, and how do you think this thing's going to go down when we get later in the season? When we get towards the end of the season, who's got to make some moves in that conference to really try to get to the top there and be a contender once the playoffs come around?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question because right now the East to me seems a little weaker than the West, and maybe going into the season, I would have thought the opposite. But, one of the biggest surprises to me is the Metropolitan Division. Not surprised that the Rangers are in first place per se, but look behind them. Who would have thought the Philadelphia Flyers heading into this season were going to be a playoff team? It's been a masterful coaching job by John Tortorella, who absolutely should be a Jack Adams finalist at the end of the season. He's got some good young talent there, but he's relying on a lot of younger players. I didn't think they had the defensive structure. I just didn't think they were good enough personnel-wise. Here they are sitting in third place. Now the question becomes, how do they overcome losing Carter Hart, likely for the rest of the season? He's their number one goalie. They do have Sam Urson, who is kind of chomping into his playing time. But there's a team that's probably going to have to go out and trade for a goalie now that Carter Hart, has left the team. We know about the indefinite leave of absence that he's taken with that, unfortunate situation from several years ago, and charges being brought against him and several other NHL players from their junior days, the assault charges. So that's not a great story. Carter Hart's got a lot more to worry about than playing for the Flyers right now. But the Flyers, they owe it to their team right now to go out and do something before the deadline. I think that's probably going to be aggressive in the goalie market. It may not be a true number one. I've heard John Gibson's name, floating around. It's been floating around really for a couple of years now, the Anaheim goalie. That would be a true number one. I'm not sure Philly goes down that route. It might be more of a 1A, maybe a Jake Allen, for example, from Montreal. But to me, they're a big surprise. That whole division's a big surprise. It's kind of topsy-turvy because I really thought the New Jersey Devils would be right up there. I thought it'd be Rangers, Devils, Hurricanes in some fashion, top three. And, the Devils have been a surprise the other way.
Oh, yeah.
They have really underachieved after a terrific breakout season last year. And for them, it goes to goaltending. They've had a ton of injuries, too, including All-Star Jack Hughes, who can't participate this weekend because of injury. Dougie Hamilton, their top defenseman's out long-term. But their goaltending has been a terrible disappointment. Yeah. And so they need to get a goalie as well. And they, probably more so than the Flyers, probably need a number one goalie because I don't think they have one right now in the system. And just also from a positive surprise, and people may say, what are you talking about? They're the Boston Bruins. They had more points in the NHL last year than anybody else. Well, to me, they're a surprise. Not surprised that they're battling for a playoff spot, but that they're first place in a really good division.
Yeah.
Right? You lose guys like Bergeron and Krejci.
Crazy.
Those are big blows, but it shows how good a coach Jim Montgomery is, how good a team, how deep a team they are.
I was going to say deep. Yeah,
they could absorb those two losses, right?
Yeah, incredible.
And the other thing is their goaltending, their team defense and their goaltending, and that's what wins come playoff time. I know they got bounced early last year after the great regular season, and less is expected of them, even though they're in first place again this season. They could be a dangerous team coming the playoff time.
And that might be a great spot for them, right? So the expectations are lowered a little bit because of what happened last year. So now they can kind of go at it. And to your point about the depth there is incredible. Now we go to the West, which just blows my mind here because the Central Division, you have the three teams. You have Colorado, Dallas, and of course Winnipeg, all within 1 point of each other there. Then in the Pacific Division, you talked about the Canucks earlier in this conversation who were there. And then, of course, the Golden Knights, who started off so hot this season, are still right there. But to me, Edmonton, 10-0. They have a 10-game winning streak heading into this. That's the kind of situation where you're like, hey, I don't want the All-Star break. We're 10-0. We're on this roll. But we'll start with that Pacific Division. Talk about those teams there. I mean, you look at that, and even Los Angeles is only 3 behind Edmonton as far as points go there in the Pacific Division. This thing's going to be, I think, like a bloodbath.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I mean. The West has been the better conference, in the regular season, better divisional battles and everything. You mentioned Edmonton. First, there was the surprise that they got off to such a hellacious start to the season. And then I figured, hey, listen, they're too good. They're going to course correct. I didn't expect them to win. It's actually 16 games in a row now. They are one shy of the all-time winning streak, best winning streak in league history. Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect their defense to play so well. That's been the biggest change since Chris Knobloch became head coach, when he came in early in the season. Their goaltending has solidified. Stuart Skinner has been a tremendous surprise about how well he's played, how durable he's been, because he's playing every night. They're a team that probably needs to go out and get a backup goalie ahead of the deadline as well. Skinner, I don't know if he can keep playing the amount that he's playing at this point. But he's been terrific. And during this long winning streak, they are on a run of allowing teams of 2 goals or fewer, or 3 goals fewer in 12 consecutive games. I mean,
that's insane.
That's not the Edmonton Oilers we know and love. Yeah. It's not run and gun, McDavid and Draisaitl, right? And now they added Corey Perry, great experienced guy, Stanley Cup winner. He's been to 3 other Stanley Cup finals. I mean, this guy, really will add an element come playoff time for them. Gritty, hard-nosed guy. So, there's a lot to like about Edmonton. But, you touch on some of the other teams. Vancouver and Winnipeg, who just are making these trades to kind of kick off trade deadline season. 2 of the biggest surprises in the league. Yeah, I thought Vancouver would be a little bit better. I love Rick Tocchet as a coach. Winnipeg, I thought they'd be a little bit better, but to be honest, I had them not making the playoffs this year.
Wow.
They seem to be kind of in that transition stage. We're going to start moving on from the guys that have gotten us here over the years, but they've been so good, and it's from top to bottom. I mean, they are the essence of team. Great job by Rick Bowness there. And it starts with Connor Hellebuck in goal. To me, he is the runaway Vezina Trophy winner. As good as Jeremy Swayman's been in Boston, he's been unbelievable in Winnipeg. And just touching on your Vegas Golden Knights, because I see the hat, and you said you're wearing
I'm not biased or anything.
You said your NHL hat, which means you only have one.
Well, no,
right?
I have several. Oh,
okay. All right. Well, you said my, so I figured it's only one. It's the Golden Knights.
Including a Rangers hat, by the way, which nice. I got going to MSG, and then my older daughter has since stolen from me, so I have to find it back.
All right, we'll get you a new one from Forever Blue. But real quick thought on Vegas, and I know Jack Eichel's out. He's got he had the minor surgery, but he's going to be out several weeks. But they just got a key guy back, and we've talked a lot about goaltending here, right? Adin Hill, your cup-winning goalie, is now back. And listen, they were doing well, not great. They had come back down to the pack with Logan Thompson kind of handling the bulk of the goaltending. But now you get Adin Hill back, and I think he's looked really good since coming back. And that could be a huge difference maker for Vegas if he stays healthy the rest of the way and into the playoffs.
Yeah, they've continued to have health issues. But, and listen, I mean, hockey is a tough sport. It's a long sport. To win the Stanley Cup still, to me, is the most difficult thing to do in all of pro sports.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to repeat, as you know. But listen, you're there for the All-Star game. So let's get into some of this All-Star game fun. I had heard through the grapevine, Jim, that Michael Bublé, of course, the great singer, crooner, whatever you want to call him, entertainer, kind of shook up the hockey world yesterday by some of the things he said. Tell us a little bit about what Michael Bublé did up there in Toronto yesterday.
Yeah, it was a real drop the mic moment here. Just the backstory is they did a draft last night. It's just they're always trying to change up the All-Star game, keep it fresh, and they bring in new skills competitions that takes place tonight. But they had some celebrity captains for a draft. And so he was a celebrity captain for Team Hughes, which is run by Quinn Hughes of the Canucks and his brother Jack of the Devils. Well, Michael Bublé is a massive Vancouver Canucks fan. He's a massive hockey fan, but he's a massive Vancouver Canucks fan. So he's thrilled to be there with with Quinn Hughes. And he was, he grabbed the microphone on ice during introductions, and he talked about how no Canucks better get hurt during this event this weekend because this is all about my Stanley Cup. And it was kind of funny and everything. You're like, oh, he's a little hyped up, but whatever. So later on, they brought the celebrity captains, including Justin Bieber, Will Arnett, and Michael Bublé into the interview area. And Bublé is going on and on and on about how he is the greatest fantasy hockey owner. He's got two teams. One's in first place. The other one is surging to first place. And he's going on and on and on. And then he just pivots out of nowhere, veers off course, and talks about how his friend had told him that he had just given him a microdose of mushrooms. What? Microdose of mushrooms? And he talks about shrooming at NHL All-Star Draft. He said, goodness. I'm out there, I'm looking around at the crowd. I thought I was in the middle of Blades of Glory. This is Michael Bublé. What the heck?
My goodness.
I mean, needless to say, it crashed the internet, broke social media.
Yeah.
But it was fun, right? This is supposed to be a fun weekend and everything. And you know how the NHL is. Things are kind of buttoned up. Even always. Guys, it's rare when they really, really show personality. And I know he wasn't a player, but he was playing a big part in this weekend. And I'm not so sure the league was happy to be connected to shrooming with Michael Bublé. But I mean, it was just crazy. It was fun. It was unexpected. And it kind of was a highlight, if you will. I don't know how he's feeling this morning. Hopefully he makes it to the skills competition tonight. But and there's a lot of that, a lot of that fun. And it's great to see the camaraderie between guys on different teams. And and you know what? Neat too that the PWHL, the women, got to take part in this weekend. They had a 3-on-3 showcase, and they, it was a cool event. And you talk about great symmetry and chemistry. These women, they are all in this together. You may play for New York, you may play for Toronto, Minnesota, whatever, but we're in this together. We're going to make this league work. And that camaraderie that's exactly the right word. It's really cool to be a part of that.
Well, and it's also great too. I mean, I think for everybody to get together in the professional hockey community here in North America and be able to kind of just relax for a minute because it is a long season and you get to just kind of enjoy stuff. And you talked about the skills competition. Now I'm excited because we're going to be with you all weekend and we're going to have lots of content coming out there. So make sure you subscribe to the Sports Not YouTube channel, also Forever Blue Shirts as well. So check out Forever Blue Shirts and all the channels too. So not just here on YouTube, but also on the websites, on TikTok, on Instagram, on X.com, everywhere. Because Jim's going to be there. He's going to give us something and we're going to make sure that we keep him away from any digestible things, and we're going to keep him away from Michael Bublé so he can get his work done. We don't.
Maybe I'll be hanging with Biebs instead.
With Biebs, yes. Okay, don't let him talk you into a crazy tattoo though. No. All right, Jim Cerny, our NHL managing editor at sportsnot.com and also at foreverblueshirts.com. So make sure you check that out as well. Jim, we'll talk to you later in the weekend.
Thanks so much, Scott. Appreciate your time.